Hey guys, it's Brittany here again. I thought that I should make this next video about the books I've read in the last 12 months. So let me just start off by saying that I've been reading books for fun since the 6th grade. I was about 11 years old when I was starting to read books for fun. I was that kid who was begging my mom to take me to the library every time I finished my stack of books that I would get from each trip. So I was getting like minimum like 5 books at a time till probably like sometimes I was checking out like 10 books at a time. I went really hard reading again because we were quarantined for 3 months, about 3 months. I was a little scared to go to my local bookstore like I usually do, and I bought books off of Amazon, which is totally fine, but if you can, I would always recommend going to a bookstore to buy your books. You're just helping a small business, and going into a local bookstore is always really a fun experience, especially the one I go to. The one I go to is called Sundance Bookstore. It's not that far from my home, and it just makes it kind of looks the way reading feels for me, like the experience of it all. It's kind of hard to put into words, but for my book lovers, you'll understand what I mean. Just puts you in a really good place. The good thing about the books that I chose to read these last few months, they are not the books that I was reading back when I was a kid. When I was in middle school, high school, books I was reading for fun were typically like I was obsessed with vampire books. I feel like I read every vampire book that was out around that time. The books I chose to read now were autobiographies and books that turned into movies, and so far I've read one book about social change. All of these books are all very different from each other. These are all books I would recommend to family and friends. Alright, let's get to it. So the first book that I read was The Last Black Unicorn by Tiffany Haddish. Reading this book, I was super excited. I could not put that book down. It was so good. Literally made me laugh out loud, which is not, an easy task for any writer to do. And it's very touching. It's so funny. It goes over her journey as a child, how she grew up, what put her on the journey to comedy. She talks about her past relationships and how they shaped her, the role models that she had, and the things that they said that she's kept with her for all these years, and how she still hears them in her head to this day. If you don't know who Tiffany Haddish is, she is a comedian who, if you don't know her comedy, she also has had many leading roles in movies ever since she took off, and she has not stopped. So I'm very proud of where she's come and where she's going, and reading her story was really touching, and I would recommend anyone to read it. There is a part in there, actually I believe it was a whole chapter, that was talking about her experience in domestic violence. So if that is a trigger for you, I wouldn't recommend reading. I recommend reading the whole book, but that chapter specifically, I would probably skip it if it's too much, because she does go into detail exactly what had happened within that relationship, and it's really hard to get through. The rest of the book, very uplifting, very positive, so I recommend reading that. Another autobiography that I read was this one. It is called I'm Fine and Other Lies by Whitney Cummings. I've become a recent fan. I've always known who Whitney Cummings was, but it wasn't until it wasn't until after I read this book that I became like a true fan of her, and I'm like, you know, following her on social media and like trying to figure out about her life. And she also has this podcast that I've become really obsessed with called Good For You. Reading this book and then listening to her podcast every time I'm at work has been very uplifting. She talks about her experience with her eating disorder growing up and how it followed her all the way into her 20s. She talks about mental health. She's talked about her codependence. She also talked about therapy. So she also talks about her body dysmorphia. So it wasn't until recently that I really had a grip on what body dysmorphia is. I had never really heard about it, but that's a topic that she does go over in this book, how she dealt with that, specifically in her breast area. I'm not saying this book was exactly relatable to me, but I enjoyed reading it anyway. I feel like it has a little bit for every, you know, woman out there. Like, I like this book a lot. The next book that I had read was this one. It is called Is Everyone Hanging Out Without Me and Other Concerns by Mindy Kaling. So maybe you've heard of Mindy, maybe you've only seen her. Let me get that a little bit closer. You might recognize her face. She was a main character on The Office, which has been a country favorite, pretty much. This book goes over about her start before The Office. I didn't know. I thought her big break was The Office. Turns out she had a big break before The Office even happened. It's kind of an older book. It's not like this book didn't just recently come out. I believe this is her first book. I believe she wrote one or two more after this, I think. It also includes some photographs in it, not just words and stories. She talks I think the reason why I like this book is like she talks to you like she's your girlfriend. Like, you know, she's very chatty and doesn't leave anything out. She's just full of details, whether they're important or they're not. But that's how we talk. That's how girls talk to each other. I know from experience. I know I do that myself. And so it's not hard to get through because of that, because I'm kind of like just following along on her story. It's very cute. It's a very funny book. If you're a fan of Mindy's, I recommend reading this book. Alright, the last autobiography. Well, actually, this is not exactly an autobiography, but because it's more of a, what did she call it? She called it a coffee table book. So it's more about pictures than it is about words, even though there's a few pages here and there where she includes, you know, a short story about an experience that she had. So the book I'm referring to is #very fat, #very brave, The Fat Girl's Guide to Being #brave and Not a Dejected, Melancholy, Down in the Dumps, Weeping Fat Girl in a Bikini. Yes, it has a very long title. It's by Nicolebyer. She is also another comedian. Nicolebyer, very hilarious. The first time I saw her was on that show Girl Code on MTV. The next time I saw her, she had her own little show called Loosely Exactly Nicole. And then she pretty much kind of got her big break, where she had a leading role in this Netflix show called Nailed It. That show has like 4 seasons, and it has 2 seasons of holiday episodes. So she's doing really good right now. And on top of that, she has this really amazing podcast called Why Won't You Date Me? Where she pretty much talks to her friends, people even people she's barely known, and asks them like, hey, like, what do you think I'm doing wrong? Why have I never had like a full long-term relationship? I believe she says like the longest actual relationship she's ever had didn't go more than like, oh God, was it like 3 or 6 months? It's a really funny podcast. I fell in love with it. Like, I I listened to the first episode and I was like, this is the best thing I've ever heard, and it's the reason why I'm kind of really into podcasts right now. So anyway, I'm just gonna flip through it real quick so you can like see that most of these are just pictures. It is pretty much motivation for women who are considered plus size to just dress however the frick they want. But yeah, she and a good friend of her named Kim Newmoney, they took all these beautiful pictures of her. They went all over California to take these pictures. She even took one in a construction site. So anyway, I don't know. I bought this book mostly just to, I don't relate to this obviously, but I think it's super encouraging to women who do relate that they should just dress however they want and not care who sees it, and what they're wearing will make others feel. They should just dress to make themselves happy and be happy with themselves, pretty much. So that's what this book is about. I love it. It honestly just made me smile going through all these pictures and her tips and tricks about what put her on this journey and why she wrote this book in the first place. Another book that I read was Gone Girl by Gillianflynn. So you probably have already read this book or you've heard of it because it became a movie, and the movie was freaking great. One of my favorite movies of all time, honestly, was Gone Girl. Like, it was that intense and that good to me. Unfortunately, I watched the movie a long time ago, back when it first came out, and I didn't read this book until like a few months ago. So I already knew what was gonna happen, but it's true what they say, the book is always better than the movie. I was able to focus more on the plot line of the whole story reading it than I was watching the movie. There's definitely some chapters in here that weren't included in the movie that really do give you a better picture of like what was really going on in the main couple's relationship. So I'm not going to talk much about this one just because everyone pretty much already knows the premise of this book, and because of the movie was so big and it did so well. So I'm not going to talk much about it, but I do recommend, like, if you did love that movie, I recommend reading the book too because it was really good. Alright, we're coming down to our last two books. So I did it again. I watched a movie, fell in love with it. Then I found out, oh my gosh, they have a book as well. So that book is The Sun Is Also a Star by nicolayoon. I hope I'm saying that correctly. This book was very beautifully written. I really adored the movie. This book was written so well, and it was easy to follow, and it touched on the social issue of immigration and, you know, the American dream and the cultural views of relationship, like this race can't date this other race. And I know it sounds so ridiculous that we're still talking about this, but there are still people out there and there's still families out there who believe that their race should only date within their race or only can date within these specific races and stuff. I feel it's so dumb, but it's a thing that's still going on, so we still have to talk about it. This book was so good. It was so heartwarming. The relationship, it was just like, it felt so fairy tale, this book. Like, just reading it, I'm just like, oh, why did you have to say that? Oh, why did you have to do this? You guys are so perfect for each other. That's how what I was saying in my head reading this book. Like, it's about these two teenagers. Boy is Asian. The girl is, I believe, Jamaican it was, and their families, well, actually, just his family disapproves him dating her. They have to, due to immigration laws, they are being forced out of New York and back to Jamaica. And this girl is doing whatever she can to fight and to stay. Meets with a whole bunch of people to try to figure out that her whole family can stay, because she doesn't want to leave. She doesn't. Apparently, she left Jamaica when she was like 9, and she doesn't know anything else. And she's like 18 years old now. If you love a good love story, you want to read about one that was just so spectacular and adorable, this is the book to read. The Sun Is Also a Star. The last book that I read was I'm Still Here, Black Dignity in a World Made for Whiteness by Austinchanningbrown. So this is the first book I've ever read about social change. Obviously, this is a book about racial injustice. Specifically, the person, don't mistake the name, but this person's actually a woman, and her family gave her this name on purpose just to give her a leg up on her resume. And then on top of that, this woman is black, so she has had to overcome so much to get where she is. And she talks about all the stupid microaggressions she's had to go through and all the obstacles that have gone in her way in order for her to be in the career that she wants to be in. Honestly, I'm remembering now, looking at it, I underlined so many things in this book. So I'm just going to give you a quick taste of what this book is about. So I'm just going to read something that I had underlined while reading it. But numbers are only the beginning. Whiteness constantly polices the expressions of blackness allowed within its walls, attempting to accrue no more than what's necessary to affirm itself. It wants us to sing the celebratory "We shall overcome" during MLK Day, but doesn't want to hear the indicting lyrics of Strange Fruit. It wants to see a black person seated at the table, but doesn't want to hear a dissenting viewpoint. It wants to pat itself on the back for helping poor black folks through missions or urban projects, but it has no interest in learning from black people's wisdom, talent, and spiritual depth. Whiteness wants enough blackness to affirm the goodness of whiteness, the progressiveness of whiteness, the open-heartedness of whiteness. Whiteness likes a trickle of blackness, but only that which can be controlled. So, pretty much the whole book is kind of, written like that. Like, I've always had a hard time explaining to people what it means to be black in America, what it means to be a person of color, and I never find the right words. And I wish that I could just carry this book around and I feel like every argument I've ever gotten into, the answer is literally an argument about racial injustice. Literally all the answers are in this book specifically. Like, I wish that everybody read this book. Like, you will be a better person for reading this book. This book is, if you don't take anything away from this video, take this. Read this one. This one is not long. Let's see, it is, I think 182 pages. Like, you honestly could read this in less than a day. Like, set aside like 5 or 6 hours to read this, depending on how fast of a reader you are. Like, literally you could get this done in a day. If you want to be a better person in terms of social issues, this is the book to read, okay? I suggest everyone read it. I suggest you suggest it to other people to read it. This is a really, really, really good book, and I love it, and I got so much great wisdom reading this book, and I felt a lot. I believe there was some pages in here that did actually make me cry. So yeah, read this book. Tell your friend to read this book. Tell your significant other to read this book. Tell your family members to read this book. It is a great book, and everyone, I think, should read this. So, those were my book recommendations that I have read recently in the last 12 months, and I hope that you read them too, or at least one of them. And if you do end up reading them, or you have read one of those, please leave a comment telling me your experience about reading those books, or if you saw this video, ended up reading it, and come back, let me know what you thought of it. And yeah, just hit me up in the comments, tell me what you think of the video, tell me what you think of the book recommendations, and tell me, you can give me some book recommendations. I feel like I have more people in my life recommending movies and TV shows to me, and I would really like it if more people were recommending some good books to read. So if you have a good book that you've read in the past or you're reading right now, please let me know. I'm always ready for a good book. I hope if you haven't started reading books for fun, you should start now.